What is going on, guys? In this video, we are building out a voice AI agent that is capable of literally calling any single person you want it to, whether it's a friend or whether it's a business that you're finding online automatically. We're going to be doing that, and this video is for you. Just before we get into it, guys, because we will be reviewing this software, we're going to be building it out together. I just want to stress the limitations. It's nowhere near perfect, and if you do decide to use technology like this, just make sure to test it out, make sure you're super happy with it. But with that being said, let's dive into how this works. We are using n8n. If you guys haven't done so already, you can go ahead and get a free trial right now. And as always, all of the blueprints in these videos are absolutely for free. You can download them in the description down below, come into your n8n account, hit the three dots and import them from the file that you receive. Let's get into how this actually works so that you can see for yourself whether this is something that is interesting to you or not. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send a message to this. Hey, can you please find me 5 restaurants for Indian food tonight in Montreal that I can go to with my friends? And so it's going to essentially send that off, and we can see that it's firing off. It's taking that audio message, transcribed that message. First thing that's happening is we push that over to the AI agent. It has used ChatGPT here as like a reasoning model to understand what it is I'm looking to do. And the first thing it's going to do is just web scrape a bunch of results off of Google Maps for me. And then it's going to spit that back out to the AI agents to understand, okay, send this back to Jono because he wants to take a look at the results from what we've gathered so far. And so essentially it's going to take all 5 of those results and then it's going to send it back to us via Telegram. And here we go. Here are 5 Indian restaurants in Montreal that you can consider for tonight. And it just goes through all of them, right? And so essentially I can just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pick number 2. And we can go ahead and get the voice AI agent to give it a call. Hey, number 2, Plateau Cuisine Indian sounds good to me. I'd like to book a table for 2 tonight between 5 to 9 p.m. Ideally, it would be beside a window. And if they don't have any availability for tonight, I'm just going to cancel and look somewhere else. Thanks. And so we're going to send off this message. The first thing it should do is it should just double check the details with us. And if everything looks good, then we can confirm it and send it off. If we already provide all the details like a fallback plan and all that kind of stuff, it's going to automatically schedule that call, which you can see on my phone here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up. Hello?
Hello, I would like to make a reservation.
Okay, perfect. For how many people?
I'd like to reserve a table for 2 people.
Okay, awesome. And what time would you like to come in at?
Anytime between 5 to 9 p.m. works for me.
Okay, we have availability at 7 p.m. tonight.
That's great. I'll take the 7 p.m. slot.
Okay.
Can I also request a table by the window, if possible?
We don't have a table by the window. Is that a deal breaker for you?
No, that's not a deal breaker. I'll take the reservation at 7 p.m. without the window table.
Okay, and can I get a name, please?
My name is Jono.
Okay, and can I get a number to call you back at?
You can reach me at 604-123-4567.
Okay, awesome. We'll see you tonight.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Me too. Bye-bye. And so there we go. It's just gone ahead and it's given that restaurant a call. And then it's going to essentially grab all the data from that call. And then if everything looks good to go, it's going to spit it back out to ChatGPT, which is going to reason and understand what it is we have to do next. Send us a message with the confirmed booking. And it's also going to add that to my calendar as well, so that I can have that to view. So let's go back and see that our reservation at this restaurant has been successfully made. Here are the details. Everything looks good to go. And we can also take a look at the calendar as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my calendar here. And we can see a dinner reservation for tonight at 7 p.m. So that's pretty cool, right? And the thing is that this also has a fallback value just in case, like, for example, you know, they're like, hey, we're not actually available. It's like, no problem. We're just going to look somewhere else. And that's good to go. Another thing it can do is book other things other than just restaurants, for example, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll try this out with a hair appointment this time. Hey, I'd like to book a hair appointment. And so let's just give it like a really basic prompt here where it's like not really going to give it enough information. It's going to send a message back. Can you please provide more details about the hair appointment, specifically the date and time, the service, fallback plan, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to book a hair appointment in Montreal. Can you give me a couple options to choose from? And so first thing is I don't even know what the hair appointment or hair shop it's going to recommend. So let's go ahead and let's scrape Google and let's bring back some results, right? Because I want to just make sure that I get to choose something that seems, you know, somewhat good to me. And so we're going to go ahead, we're going to scrape Google, and we're going to do the same process again, find some barber shops. And just keep in mind, like, we're doing this for restaurants, we're doing this for hair salons, we can do this for pretty much any other service out there. The only thing is that obviously you're going to have to spend some time perfecting this because every single service might be slightly different, and it's just important to run some tests to make sure that you get it up and running and you're happy with the results before you actually push something like this live. And so we're just waiting for it to synthesize all those results here, which it should bring us back 5. And let's take a look. So we have 5 different places, and I'm just going to say, like, for example, number 4 is closest to my house, and we can go ahead and book that. Can you please book number 4, Studio Fior? And I'm available anytime after 5 p.m. this week. And that's pretty much it. It's a hair appointment for a man's haircut. And so we can go ahead, send that off. And now we're just gonna receive that response and then start this workflow. And let's see, okay, it just goes ahead and schedules the call immediately. Hello?
Hello, I would like to book a hair appointment.
Okay, for what time?
Jono is available anytime after 5 p.m. this week, starting from February 17th. Do you have any availability during those times?
We don't have availability this week, unfortunately, but maybe next week?
That's okay. Thank you. We will follow up next week for an appointment.
Okay, sounds good. Well, then just give us a call back then.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
And so that's kind of like the fallback, right? Where it's like, hey, I said anytime this week, and it recognizes that they don't have availability this week. They only have availability next week. So the fallback value is, don't move forward with it and just schedule another call, or hey, we'll reach back out again. And so that's kind of how these systems work. So while this technology is super, super freaking cool, it definitely comes with a whole host of limitations. The thing is it's not perfect out of the box, especially for an implementation like this, just because if you're trying to call all these different service providers, it might not have all the information it needs unless you test it out super rigorously. What I mean by that is, take calling a restaurant, for example. If you don't tell it how many people you want sitting at the table, it's not going to know if you want 2 or 4 or 8 or whatever, right? So those are kind of the limitations that come along with this technology. We're obviously going to be building in some fallbacks and making sure that we can accommodate for as many different circumstances as possible, but just know that it's not probably going to work 100% of the time. All right, guys, so before we get into building this, I just want to point out I did release my community a few days ago. So if you guys are interested in learning things like AI agents, automation, or AI, this is probably the place for you. There's over 100 unreleased videos on this platform, tons of blueprints that I haven't released either, as well as a community of like-minded individuals and access to me on group calls 5 days a week, pretty much. So let's get into building this out. So the first thing is this is going to be a high-level overview. I'm not going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of how to build this out. I just want to kind of showcase what I built so that you guys can understand more or less how to work through this yourself. So the first thing is we're using Telegram, okay? And Telegram is just the trigger. It's essentially receiving messages, right? So anytime we receive a message from Telegram, this is going to start, right? And so essentially you don't have to use Telegram. You can use tons of other things as well. You can use Twilio. It's like a SMS platform. You can also use WhatsApp as well. And obviously that's super popular. The only reason why I did end up choosing Telegram was just because it's just so freaking simple to set up and get going. And it's great to test these things out. And so the next thing is that we have a switch statement here. And a switch statement is just checking, hey, is this an audio message or is this a text message? And if it's an audio message, we just essentially have to download that file and then we have to transcribe it. And once we transcribe that, then we turn that into text, right? So this is kind of boilerplate. Like there's really nothing to do here other than just add in OpenAI module and put in transcribe, and then it's just going to take the file and then it's going to turn that into text, right? And the cool thing is no matter what it is, whether it's an audio file or text, we're just kind of merging it together. So it's like, hey, these paths both converge here. So we're just taking the text out of the audio file or the text out of the message, and we're just merging that into one field that we use for the actual message. And this field is just JSON.text. So whether it's an audio message or text, we're merging it together to use here. And essentially we have our AI agent here with a nice little prompt. This prompt is just essentially saying, hey, you are a very helpful voice AI agent that excels at calling people on the behalf of your user. They'll either have to find people with their personal contact tools or find their phone number on Google Maps. And then essentially it just lists out the tools that we're using here and the rules that it needs to follow in order to do things, right? So there's an order of operations. So for example, it's like, hey, if we want to find businesses online to call because I want to book a dinner tonight, well, we actually got to search up a couple businesses so that we actually have the contact information of the people to call. And then once we've successfully had a call, then let's go ahead and book an appointment on our calendar, right? And so this is just kind of like a, I'm just playing around with this, and I just wanted to throw something together that's, not 100% bulletproof, but like a good starting point for you guys to take away from. I think another recommendation that I have is at this point in time, just taking a look at your availability, right? The assumption that I built this with is that you probably are booking something at a time that you are free, but you can also take a look at your availability and just make sure that, hey, before we book this, we're not going to call. And so you can add in another module here being like, check my calendar, see if I'm available during that time. So if you're like, hey, you book dinner tonight at 5 to 7, but you actually have calls tonight at 5 to 7, you probably don't want to book it, right? And that's something that this AI agent can easily handle. And so essentially you just add in another tool. And let's kind of break this AI agent down. So there's 3 parts to it. This AI agent has a chat model, a memory, and tool. So chat model, you can think about it like a miniature ChatGPT inside this AI agent. It's the brains, the logic, the reasoning behind this AI agent. So essentially when you send a message, the first thing it has to do is actually understand what it is you're saying. And that's what ChatGPT does. And then ChatGPT will give instructions over to the tools to be like, hey, update the calendar or check the calendar or find a business online to web scrape or call or whatever, right? So it's going to give commands to the tools to use. And you have a lot of options here. I just use like ChatGPT, but you can have access to whatever AI model that you want to have access to. The next thing here is window buffer memory. What window buffer memory does is essentially just, you can think of it like ChatGPT. It like just remembers past conversations or past messages in the chat, right? So you can ask follow-up questions and it'll actually remember, hey, this is a follow-up question that depends on the question that came before this, right? So for example, if I say, hey, can you please schedule or call this hair appointment, and it says, sure, no problem, can you give me a time window you're available at? And you say 5 to 7, it's going to remember not only 5 to 7, but that you actually wanted to call that hairdresser, and then it'll go ahead and complete that task for you. So right now the default is just like 5 messages that it's remembering, but you can add as many in here as you want. Apart from that, we have the output here, which is actually sending messages back. So you can kind of think about this as a 3-part process where we're first of all getting the input, which is the message. We're sending it back as an output, and then we actually have the system that's handling the requests here. And so we've gone over the chat model, which is the brains. We've gone over the memory, which remembers the context of the conversation. And then we have these cool, nifty little tools. The first one I want to kind of go over is just the personal contact finder. So you can essentially find contacts within your Google Calendar, or sorry, your Google Contacts. And so you can pull out things like phone numbers and emails and all that kind of stuff. So in this case, we could pull out a phone number, give our friend a call if you want to do that. The second thing is that we're using Google Maps. And just, sorry, before I move on here with Google Contacts, we're just essentially asking it to return back phone numbers, names, email addresses. And what we're doing is we're passing in a name. And then as long as that name is actually in your Google Contacts, then it will go ahead, find that person, pull them back, and then deliver that phone number, that name, that email address, and that phone number we would use to go ahead and call them. Now, the next thing here is web scraping Google Maps, right? Which is the main crux of this video. And so what is going on in this simple workflow is we have the first trigger here, which is saying, hey, this is executed from another workflow. What that practically means, and what all of these mean, because they're all executed by a separate workflow, is just saying, hey, the starting point of this workflow is when this AI agent, the main AI agent, calls it. So if it's like, hey, let's go find Google Maps, it's going to reference this tool, and that's going to start this particular workflow. And so there's really 3 things in here. There's 2 HTTP requests, and there's an aggregator at the end here. So let's kind of go over this. An HTTP request is just essentially the same thing as Google Contacts here or Google Calendar. All of these are HTTP requests. If I had a tool here, Google Drive an HTTP request, Google Calendar, Google Docs, all of these are. The only difference between an HTTP request and these is that these have a native integration into n8n. They already built in, the n8n team came in here and they integrated their software into these tools. But there's a lot of tools that they haven't covered. Right now they have about 400 integrations, and there's thousands of applications that you can connect into. And how you do that is through something called an HTTP request. And so essentially, more or less, in a nutshell, what we are doing in this HTTP request is we're just web scraping using Apify. Now, Apify is like a web scraping platform for people that don't need to learn how to program. And the cool thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's tons of programmers that have built out working solutions that just work. And so we're using something like a Google Maps extractor, which just essentially takes listings off of Google Maps. So if I do like hairdresser in Toronto, it's going to give me back this list of hairdressers. And essentially what this is doing is it's going and it's pulling off 5 hairdressers for you. And then it's grabbing things like their contact information, their phone number, their address, all that kind of stuff, so that you can go ahead and give those people a call, right? And so that's in a nutshell what we're trying to do. There's a couple parameters that we just have to play around with in here. Let's go through this one by one. We're sending off a post request, which is just a method. It's just jargon for saying, hey, we're sending data from n8n to Apify, and Apify is going to take that data and it's going to web scrape Google Maps using this particular or another actor, right? So all this is doing is it's calling Apify to then go ahead and web scrape hairdressers or restaurants off of Google Maps here, right? So that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and do it yourself. And so we have a URL here. This is just from their API documentation. Pretty much this is plug and play. You don't even have to change anything other than this ID here, which is just the actor. So if you come into Apify and you go into any of these actors, they have a store here. There's tons and tons and tons. If we just go into Google Maps here, I think I'm using specifically this one. And yeah, you can just grab the ID from the URL up top here, and they all have different URLs. You can just plug it in here and you're good to go, and you can web scrape whatever actor it is that you want. And then more or less, you just have to include these headers here. This is nothing revolutionary. This is just documentation from their site saying, hey, in order to have an HTTP request, in order to actually send data to scrape, you need to include this. So this is boilerplate. I've just added in here. The only other thing you need to do is include an API, and you can just find that by going to settings and going to APIs here, and then you can just grab your API, connect it in, and you're good to go. And then more or less other than that, you just have this body here. And really there's nothing else that you have to change. I mean, this just works out of the box. Essentially, we're just putting in a city, country code, language, location, how many locations do we want to crawl. I just put a maximum of 5 here. So I'm just saying, even if you said like 100, it's just going to cap you at 5 regardless. And so that way you're not like using a ton of data or whatnot. You can't get started with Apify for free, and you have $5 to use. You can see $5 here. But, you know, obviously with this kind of stuff, you still get a lot of credits here, because you could essentially do this 800 times without paying a dime, and this resets every month, but you don't want to web scrape over that and then not be able to use this in a month. So yeah, I'm just limiting this to 5, and then we're just putting in a search string here, which is like Indian restaurants in whatever city. And so that's more or less it for this particular JSON file. And then it's just going off and scraping. Now, while this is scraping, this can take a bit of time. We do have this nifty little line here, which is wait for finish. This is going to wait 300 seconds for it to finish before it continues on to the next module here. That's really important because web scraping does take time. And if you didn't put that, it would just instantly go over to the next module without receiving the results back. And then this second HTTP request essentially just grabs the results from the web scrape. And we just do that through this default dataset item, which we receive from the previous module, that first HTTP request. And then pretty much that's really it. Oops, I think I just clicked something there and totally changed this. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna refresh the page here and then pull it back up. And so everything else is pretty much the same. We're just adding in the API key and this is good to go. And this is a GET request, which just means we're receiving data back. We're pulling data from Appify. We're pulling the results in, and then we're just listing these all in through an aggregator. So if it gives us a list of 10, we're just saying, hey, we're merging all these 10 into a list so that we can send back that list. So if we look back, we're just sending this list, right? So instead of sending the messages one at a time, because if you didn't do the aggregator, you get message for Danino's hairstylist, and then Beauty Glow, and then Salon Trust Me, and so on and so forth. Aggregator merges them into one message. And so that's essentially it. And the last thing that I want to go over in this is more or less just this voice AI agent, which is the main part of this video. And so let's kind of break down how this works. And so again, it's being called by the main AI agent here. And what we're doing is we're going to create a prompt using OpenAI. And so there's a lot of different things going on here. I have a system, user, and assistant message in here. You can think about the system message as just context. You can think about the user message as your input, and you can think about the assistant message as the output. So you have input coming in, output going out, and then context for it to understand what's going on. And so with the context, we're just saying you're an intelligent bot that's going to create a voice AI agent, and here's some rules to follow, right? You're supposed to sound happy and nice and upbeat and try and be as detailed as possible and create a backup plan and all that kind of stuff. And then with the actual system user message, the user message, which is the input, we're providing all the details. And so this is really where the prompting comes into play, because we're essentially saying create a Vapi opening line and call prompt for this type of call. And we give all the details. We give the date, the start time. We give, we mentioned that these are just ranges to play around with, but they're not absolutes. It's not like you have to book from the start to the end time, but anytime within that time range. And then we mentioned the first message, any special requests, what the goal of the call is, the name of the place you're calling, whether it's a friend or a business, the fallback plan, context, all of that kind of stuff. And then we give additional rules, right? So yeah, that's just essentially more or less it. This is something that you definitely have to work on. You definitely have to spend the majority of your time just here, going back and forth, making sure that this prompt is as good as possible so that you can structure your calls in the best way. Again, like if you're adding on an additional service, I would definitely test this out multiple times until you're incredibly happy with it before pushing it live. This is just like a really good starting point for you guys to take and go on and do whatever it is that you wish to do with it. But yeah, essentially this is more or less the prompt that I had. And then all we're doing here is we're just pushing that into another HTTP request, which connects in Vapi. Now, Vapi is just essentially an AI platform for calling, right? So you can think about it as voice AI for developers. There's really not that much developing that you're going to have to do in here because I've pretty much done most of it, but of course you can add on as much as you'd like here. So the first thing is again, it's a post request. We're sending data to Vapi and we're calling it based on this URL. This is essentially a URL saying, hey, we're going to initiate a call. And we have some boilerplate headers here. We're just authenticating our account via our API, and then we have the content type application JSON. Nothing you have to change here other than this API key here, and then you're good to go. And then we just have the JSON body, right? Which is more or less essentially just saying, hey, this is the information we're going to send to Vapi so that we can structure this call properly. And so we have a couple things here. First thing is that we have the phone number ID. And so with this phone number ID, all we're doing is we're coming into phone numbers. You should be able to create a phone number for free in Vapi, and then it just has this ID here that you get. Now, if you're unable to get a phone number in Vapi for whatever reason, you can also use Twilio, and Twilio has a free trial where you can just get a number and then automatically import that into Vapi as well. So this is what I'm doing as well. And so that's a great option too. So once you go ahead, you get your phone number, you can just put in your ID here. The next thing is that you're going to need an assistant ID. And so you can just go ahead and simply create an assistant by going into build assistants and create an assistant. And then you're going to get that assistant ID here too. And you can paste that assistant in. This is going to be the phone number that you are actually going to want to call. And then we have some additional information here. It's an outbound call. We're just specifying that. Nothing has to change here. And then we have information about this AI assistant. So you can change the voice, right? And they have an entire library on different voices that you can use down in the voice library here. Not all of these you're going to be able to access on a free plan, but the one that I liked that worked well was Play HT, and then you can just take any of these names and just make sure to put it in lowercase down here. And the voice ID is essentially just the person's name, right? So Samuel or lowercase, or I'm using Will here, lowercase. And the provider is essentially this, Play HT. I hope I'm saying that right. I doubt I am, but anyways, yeah. So that's the voice. And then first message mode is just essentially saying it's going to wait until the person picks up and says something. And then there's no background noise. We're passing in the first message. We're passing this in from ChatGPT's prompt. So it's going to say, hey, I'm calling Tandoori Chicken because I'm looking to make a dinner reservation, for example. And then we're using OpenAI, GPT 3.0 Turbo, and then we just have the context, which is the main prompt in here. And this it contains everything from the start time to the end time, the date, the fallback value, any special requests, and all that kind of good stuff is going to be located in the content here. And then I just put in, hey, if you're looking to give us a call back or an email back or whatever, you can go ahead and you can add this in here. And so that's more or less it. And essentially in this prompt, I'm saying, hey, there has to be a fallback value in case this doesn't go according to plan, because a lot of times it will not go according to plan and you have to account for that as well. And so moving on, we just essentially have this last section here. There's lots of different ways to do this, but we essentially are just waiting for that call to be finished, and we want to grab the transcript and send that back and then book a calendar event if it's successful. And so what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, because this call could take 10 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, we don't know. We're just essentially going to send a request to Vapi to see, hey, has this call been completed? And so we're going to see, hey, is this call being completed? And it's going to give us an answer, either yes or no. And most of the time it's going to be no, because we might, in this case, have to run it 17 times for it to be completed. So we're going to wait 5 seconds, right? And so we'll wait 5 seconds. And then after 5 seconds, we'll check, has the call successfully been completed or not? And if it's not, then we're going to go back and check again. And then wait 5 seconds, go back and check again. Wait 5 seconds, go back and check again. And then maybe on the 10th or 11th time, it'll be completed, at which point in time it will pass through, and we'll just send over the transcript of the call so that we can use that to then go ahead and go back to our main voice AI agent to book a appointment in our calendar, which we can see right here. And we can also just send ourselves back a message saying, hey, everything has been confirmed. And so essentially, in a nutshell, that is how this voice AI agent works using n8n and Vapi. I think that it has a long way to come. It is very promising, but yeah, if you guys are going to use something like this, just make sure to really test it out, make sure to have a fallback plan, make sure to have everything in place, and add anything in there that you need so that you're comfortable before using it. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you guys found value in this video, please make sure to subscribe down below. If you guys are interested in joining my community, you can head over to school.com and join this community. If you guys are wanting to learn more about AI and automation and AI agents, then this is hopefully the place for you. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.